Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Allison Secord, and I'm a marketing communications specialist with Ecolab Pest Elimination, and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar titled The Pros of Working with the Pros. We appreciate all of you, taking the time to attend today. Today, we'll be discussing the safety, quality, and regulatory challenges of in-house or DIY fumigation treatments, and the benefits or pros of working with fumigation professionals. But before we begin, I would like to go through a few housekeeping notes. All attendees will be muted throughout the duration of this webinar, and we'll conduct a Q&A session at the end. So I'd like to encourage everybody to type in a question if you have any, and on the right-hand side of the Vimeo platform. Now I will introduce today's presenters. Our first presenter today is Joy Hurt, who is the RD&E Research Development and Engineering Program Leader with Pest Elimination. She's been working with Ecolab for 26 years and has supported our food and beverage, institutional, and pest elimination divisions with innovative programs and solutions to help our customers with their food safety and public health challenges. She recently joined our pest elimination team and is currently focused on developing integrated pest management programs for our fumigation and pest elimination teams that service the food and beverage industry. This is our second presenter today, and he has over 16 years of experience in the pest management industry, but has enjoyed the last 8 years solely working with or focusing on GFSI audited food accounts, including milling, snack food, and ready-to-eat facilities. He frequently assists in conducting fumigations for large structures, import-export, and vessels. He holds both pest management and fumigation licenses in multiple states and was recently elected treasurer for the Jeeps Columbia River chapter in Washington State. He's also an active participant with IAOM Western District, and he currently resides in the Los Angeles area, but still calls Minnesota home. So we would like to thank them for presenting on this webinar today. So now I will turn it over to Joy to help kick us off. Joy?
Great. Thank you, Allison. Today we'll be discussing our role in fumigation in food protection and the importance of an integrated pest management program. Then Alex will take you through the risks and some hidden costs that you may not be aware of doing fumigation yourself, and the benefits or the pros of working with a professional fumigation company. Finally, I'll circle back with best practices and a quick summary. So let's start with an overview of fumigation and why an integrated pest management program is important. Go to the next slide. Our specialty pest services team at Ecolab is a team of uniquely trained and licensed experts. They focus specifically on fumigation. They also do fogging and bird exclusion. This team has national coverage and unrivaled reach across the value chain. We are strategically located in over 40 inland and seaport fumigation centers, and we have teams at the ready to meet your fumigation needs wherever you're located and whatever your challenge. Fumigation plays an important role in each of these food transition spaces and helps improve the quality of the commodity and reduce the risk of invasive species. Fumigation is a requirement of many local, state, federal, and global agencies. A successful fumigation partner is one that can conduct these treatments within various environments across the food supply chain and to help keep the commodities and ingredients and food safe. You know, as illustrated here, there are many environments in which a commodity requires fumigation, and Ecolab operates and has expertise in all of these areas. Fumigation is an established best practice to help eliminate insects that commonly infest our stored food commodities. An infested lot can impact your brand protection and lower the value of the commodity. The infestation can also impact the quality and safety of the food. And additionally, an integrated pest management program is required by regulatory and auditing agencies to ensure the safety of the food supply and to control the spread of invasive species in a global trading economy. The Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA as most people call it, has increased oversight and accountability for all food producing facilities. With FSMA in place, the FDA has moved away from a reactive system toward a prevention-oriented system, which includes an integrated pest management program. Across the food supply chain, we see a common theme of increased production demands. Shown here is an example of the US export shipments for almonds. So over the last 5 years, there's really been an increase in export demands, 31% increase. And these demands are really only expected to increase. You know, there's a global market expectancy for almonds to grow at a compound annual growth rate of about 4.47%, which makes the total market size of about 12 billion by 2025. These demands increase, and with labor shortages expected to continue, this will put strain on the daily activities of most producers. Exported almonds require fumigation before they depart or are exported. And when businesses are strained by capacity or labor or increased demands, these are often times when we see shortcuts taken that really impact the quality and the market value of these commodities. This scenario really isn't unique to just almonds. We see this trend of increased production demand across several US food commodities. And as the export demands increase, fumigation demands will also increase. And we do really understand why companies would choose to do their own fumigations, right? It's to maintain control of that schedule and to limit their production downtime, to ensure the quality of their goods meet their brand standards, to control costs. By doing fumigation themselves, many companies feel like they're saving money, and to maintain compliance to buyers and auditing entities. However, right, with growing demands on production and on your workforce, it's really time to evaluate if fumigating in-house is the most safe and economic activity for your operation, or if partnering with a professional fumigation company is a better choice. I'm going to turn it over to Alex here. He's got a wealth of experience, and he's going to give you some common risks and key cost implications with fumigation. Alex?
Thanks, Joy. Appreciate that. Thank you, Allison and Joy, for the great kickoff this morning. Great introduction. So let's start with the risks. And as that last slide that Joy was discussing there really gives an understanding as to why some companies choose to conduct their own fumigations. But as a customer demands, and as these production demands and then even government regulations become more and more demanding, we start to see risks increase substantially around that fumigation programs. And that's why we're here today. We're here to discuss and maybe even reevaluate the risks and the costs associated with those risks in conducting an in-house fumigation program. So we hope you come away from this event today with a few action items, either if you're a fumigator yourself, or maybe even in a company who employs a fumigator currently. So let's start with knowing the risks. So how does fumigation impact your business? And are there different risks associated with an in-house fumigation versus a professional? It's appropriate that we look at safety first, as both people that are trained, so fumigators, and even bystanders are at risk during this fumigation. And the risks only increase, though, with the frequency of these fumigations being conducted. And this could be due to either ineffective training or a possible blatant disregard for fumigation safety altogether. or possibly a misunderstanding just of current regulations or requirements that are in turn putting themselves as the fumigator or others at risk. And we want to do all that we can to protect our people and our products, and that's clear. As any qualified fumigation professional would tell you, each treatment or each fumigation should start with a proper identification of the pest that you're working with. And what are the risks of maybe a misidentification or no identification at all? Well, first we need to ask if there are multiple pests found. And this is the case and sometimes we find this happens quite a bit. But why is that important? Well, understanding that each pest present may require a different fumigation schedule or maybe even a different fumigant altogether. And that ranges in dosing as well. And this could impact the result of a fumigation or the success of that. If not dosed correctly, this could eventually lead to ineffective treatments. It could start to put you at risk for larger infestations inside facilities or structures, which in turn could lead to lost production or even a missed order. Even worse, it could contribute to fumigant resistance. I know that's a touchy subject, and it may sound far-fetched for some of us, but as you may know, we are seeing this fact more and more throughout the country. Well, how about the risk of property damage or risk of damage to equipment? This could include fire hazard, especially if we're using metal phosphenes, and this would apply during the application of or the treatment time, or even afterward for the disposal of that product. And finally, damage to your brand. And often that part of the puzzle can't be undone. So I'd like to approach the next slide here with an angle of that there is continuous changes in the industry that we may be unaware of and that also may put us at risk. And take, for instance, the anticipated changes with the approaching EPA re-regulation of phosphine. Now, buffer zones are almost a certainty at this point. Did you know that you would have to consider possibly two different kinds of buffer zones? Both zones, both a treatment zone and possibly aeration zone. And these zones may be as small as 10 feet, but also could be as large as 500 feet. Let's talk FMPs. We are already required to have a fumigation management plan in place, but did you know that you may be required to conduct 3 different monitoring events for each fumigation? How about documented training on the correct sealing techniques? And both may be part of this label change that's coming. If you're in the state of California, a work site plan similar to sulfurofluoride or methyl bromide may be required. And one thing that we already know that has changed is the language around the words restricted moved to prohibited when it comes to fumigations conducted near residences or homes. So as we look at something as small as a label change, we begin to clearly see how knowing and understanding these changes can impact your business and elevate your risk. So now that we've discussed some of the known risks of an in-house fumigation, let's discuss the cost. I mean, that's what we're most interested in most times, is the cost associated with doing this. So as Joy had mentioned earlier, the cost was one of the factors that was most considered when moving away from a professional fumigation company to doing in-house. And as we look closely at this slide, we can see that in-house fumigation programs could actually be costing you money instead of saving you money. Why? Well, because some of these costs might be very well hidden from us. It could be costs of training, for instance, licensing, those CEU credits, those continuing education credits for your employees or your fumigator, not to mention the required safety equipment, the recalibration of that safety equipment each and every year. These items are sometimes overlooked and they're not attributed to real costs of a DIY fumigation program. Well, what about your fumigator himself or herself? What if they leave? What if they decide to retire? Or what if they just need a vacation? The cost to retrain someone, get them licensed, and pay them appropriately is difficult. And that's especially true, as we all know, right now in these difficult times of finding good help. Let's look at regulatory for a second. The USDA and other state and federal agencies are stepping up in their inspections. And these could include the Air Permitting Quality Emissions Board, fumigant storage and disposal requirements, even improper or misuse of fumigant. All these agencies are looking and are not going away, and they are looking for these violations even today. And lastly, just touch on insurance for just a minute. Did you know that some insurance companies actually will refuse coverage of fumigation under their policies? And there's just too much risk involved for them. In fact, in some cases, we've seen the additional cost for including the application of fumigant on a site that it increased so much that the policy holder himself decided to move away from in-house fumigation and go to a professional altogether, just because of that cost. Now, this is a do you know kind of slide, and this is kind of geared towards the fumigators and everyone really, but did you know that a licensed fumigator is required to be physically present on site for each fumigation event? This would include both introduction, aeration, and the clearing of that fumigation. It could also be very difficult to do this fumigation as just one person, because we may have other responsibilities in and around our site or our job. And there may be multiple sites that we fumigate at, and that's hard to get to each site. Did you know that if a violation is found, so we talked about people out looking for them, if a violation is found, you as the fumigator, not the company that you work for, will be held liable for any damages or injuries or, God forbid, a death. However, the company that you work for is not entirely free from liability. There could be fines or suspensions or even civil damages awarded. If the label isn't followed, it's a violation of the law. As we know, the label is the law. We've been taught that. Insurers may choose not to cover damages or workman's comp or loss of property if the label wasn't properly followed. So as you can see, as a fumigator, there is quite a bit of responsibility on your shoulders. So now that we've talked a little bit about the risks, we've discussed a few of them that were very impactful. Let's talk, and we've talked about the costs that are associated with those risks. Let's move on to the pros of working with the pros, as today's discussion is titled. So I'm gonna let this slide just sit for a second. I know everyone is reading this, and I don't want to imply that this quote that anyone listening to the webinar here today is a fool. But I do think that we could apply this very pertinent advice when it comes to fumigation programs. I think we all agree that fumigation in itself inherently is a dangerous business. And if you don't know or unaware of what you are doing, then why are we doing it? Let's leave it to the professionals. There are many advantages, and we'll discuss a few of them, of working with a dedicated fumigation professional company. One of those pros is the access to resources, right? A trusted team of licensed fumigation specialists to call on, people who are trained and know how to effectively and safely conduct all different kinds of fumigations. How about an experienced regulatory team to handle site permitting, including fumigant storage, work site plans, USDA regulations, or even the Air Quality Board or OSHA? How about on-staff entomologists to lean on for accurate pest identification? We discussed how important that is as well as part of our risks. The proper insurance has to be provided by that fumigator. The cost of this alone might be enough to look at outsourcing these services altogether. And let's look at technology. We see the picture here in the middle of the slide of some of the recent technology that we use in the industry. You should expect these investments to be made with a professional fumigation company with the newest and the most up-to-date safety and monitoring equipment available. As we say in the industry, if you're not monitoring, you're not fumigating. So some of these new monitors could cost upwards of $30,000 each, not to mention the recalibration that needs to be done annually or any maintenance. Now, we all know we're only as good as our people, and many of you, or many are our best people in the business that we work with. But what is your business? Is it fumigation, or is it supplying a customer with a commodity or with a product? A professional fumigator is just that, a fumigator. They don't have to worry about the increased production demand that Joy talked about, or the quality control, or the budgets, or customer complaints, or logistics issues, or deadlines, or cutoff dates. They only have to worry about one thing, and that's conducting safe and effective fumigations in a timely manner, whether it be small or extremely large, as pictured here in this picture. This site had over almost 1,000 cylinders of Profume delivered. They would have to, however, consider such things as a professional fumigator, like, is the proper fumigant being used? Is each fumigant being done in accordance to the law? Is it compliant? Is there a phytosanitary that needs to be done or sent with the load? Was an NOI turned in on time into the proper county? Is there disposal and transport issues of that fumigant? Effective monitoring and sealing practices. And then lastly, up-to-date documentation. This would include that FMP that we talked about, post-fumigation reports, or even material usage reports. All things that we should expect a pro fumigator to be more than just familiar with. It should be expected for them to be the pro. With that, let's talk about some best practices, and we're going to turn it over to Joy, and then we'll get some questions from you all. So Joy, you have the rest of it.
Great. Thanks, Alex. That was really helpful information. You know, fumigation is definitely our best tool when there is an infestation or a compliance requirement. And conducting a safe and effective fumigation is really only part of the story. There are many best practices that companies should be focusing on to help minimize the risk of infestation to begin with. So let's talk about some best practices that customers or companies can take. Prevention is key to FSMA's requirements, and it starts with preparation, both inside and outside of your facility. I'm sure you have all heard this before, but it's worth repeating. Sanitation is key to prevention. And all pests are looking for food, water, or harborage, and really by maintaining a clean facility, both inside and out, is the most important prevention tool that's under your control. Secondarily, your most impactful tool is fixing those structural deficiencies. This is often where many pests will enter into your facility. However, we do know that pests do enter in with some incoming raw materials or ingredients. So it's critical to having an incoming inspection program to ensure the quality of the shipments. You know, if you're further upstream in the process and you're handling those harvested goods, start a storage season with a clean silo or bin before introducing product, kind of like the picture that you see here. Once your goods or ingredients are on site, you can reduce your percentage of IDKs by maintaining good airflow in storage areas. This helps to maintain the proper moisture content and controls the temperature of the commodities. Clean up any product spillage, especially outside of your facility. This spillage or even garbage attracts pests to your site. Control weeds, right? Or overgrowth outside of your facility. Bushes or those ornamental bushes, they provide harborage for pests and can even act as a highway into your facility. Use a year-round regimented integrated pest management program that includes monitoring and inspection. From a fumigation perspective or a fumigator perspective, there are also some best practices. An experienced professional always puts safety first. They protect the people, the product, and the brand reputation. They accurately identify those pests that are infesting your food and perform the proper treatment with a proper fumigant. A good professional will keep you compliant with all of the relevant regulations that impact your business and prevent you from having those legal and insurance issues. And really, no matter what comes up, you can rely on a pest professional that helps address your issues in a reasonable time frame and will ensure that you're always audit ready. So as we move to the next slide, we do hope that this information has been beneficial for you to understanding what those key risks and costs are involved with fumigation. As we wrap up today, let me just summarize those items that you should be looking for in a professional fumigation company. The ideal professional fumigation company should really offer a holistic approach to pest management that includes both an IPM service as well as a fumigation, which are both critical to a program's success now and in the future. Company that prioritizes safety, of course, has the proper tools, equipment, and training to get the job done safely and effectively. A company that offers multiple treatment options to provide you with the best outcome. A company that has nationwide coverage that's critical to be able to respond very quickly and provide consistency across your brand. A company that understands and adheres to those regulatory and audit requirements. And one that you can count on to communicate, to educate, and to keep you informed of all of those industry trends. And finally, as Alex had mentioned, we need to find a company that carries that proper insurance that includes the cost so that you don't have to. I'm going to return this back to Allison for a wrap up and hopefully answer some questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you, Joy and Alex, for providing us with a brief overview, educating us on in-house fumigation risks, and sharing the benefits of partnering with fumigation professionals and best practices. So we've had several questions come in throughout today's webinar, so let's answer a few. This one is for Joy. You mentioned the Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA, has increased oversight. Can you expand on that? What more is required? That's been around for a while.
Yeah, it has. Thank you. That's a great question. FSMA has been around for about 10 years now. I think it was signed into law in 2011. So yeah, the focus really hasn't changed, right? The law still focuses on prevention versus reacting to those food safety issues. However, over the past 10 years, right, FDA has worked closely with the food industry to better understand food safety risks and challenges and to develop those risk-based preventative measures. Transparency between regulator and producers have changed. Regulators are asking for more input from farmers and producers. They've listened to challenges and they've approached challenges with requirements that are feasible and effective. I do know that a lot of producers feel like auditing and enforcement has really stepped up more recently, and yes, I think it has. During COVID, these audits were virtual, and I think we anticipate having virtual audits continue for the foreseeable future, but we also know that as COVID subsides, many businesses are reopening and opening up to visitors, and auditors are starting to get back out on site to do more audits.
Great, thank you. This question is for Alex. So smaller producers have onesies and twosies or small last-minute fumigations. We need service at a moment's notice. That makes it difficult and expensive to work with a big fumigator unless you have a good solution for that.
Yeah, we do have a good solution for that. We, in fact, understand that issue. It comes up a lot, and that's one of the reasons why we provide training and even sometimes fumigant to some of those customers. Let's break down the question for a second, though. So onesie twosies, professional fumigation team would have to send out 2 fumigators to accomplish the work that's needed. So the onesie twosies isn't so much of a problem. We have enough people to be able to accomplish that. As far as the timing goes, at a moment's notice, when you work with a company like ourselves, we usually have more of an integrated pest management, as Joy was talking about, an IPM program in place. So that typically means that there's a professional at the site on a regular basis to control those pests and look at the facility, maybe even on a weekly basis. Plus, we're familiar with the facility and the needs. So typically, those types of moment notice things can be averted a little bit. And as far as the cost piece, fumigation itself just isn't cheap, and the cost of that is actually going up each and every year. Cost of fumigation, as we mentioned, insurance, all sorts of things are going up. But as we go back to the costs that occur not directly associated with the fumigation, the labor, the training, the insurance, all those materials and everything, fines, they're all things that are kind of somewhat or could be ineffective to the treatment, and they hit your reputation if something was to happen, I guess is the point. So hopefully that answers your question.
Awesome, thank you. Also for Alex, what's a good next step for the DIY folks to start to get more information or details about getting a professional fumigator on board?
Yeah, so next step, well, first and foremost, especially we see a lot of, we've touched on it today with phosphine. We're going to see this re-regulation coming up. So my advice would to get a professional fumigation company out to your site. Let's get them to look at the program altogether, address the needs, look at fumigant storage if it's needed, and really kind of address all of the concerns that maybe are happening besides the actual treatment itself. And then we'll talk cost. A lot of times the cost of that program altogether is surprisingly a lot less than what you would anticipate. So first, give a call, set up an appointment, get someone out there to the site, and go from there.
Great. I believe that is all the questions we have for today. So thank you both for your time. And thank you all for joining us. We greatly appreciate your time to attend this webinar. The recording will be available on ecolab.com on our fumigation page at the address below. So again, we hope you found this information valuable, and we look forward to seeing you at future Ecolab webinars. So have a wonderful day.